Hello, today I'm going to show you how to turn a photograph black and white in Photoshop. So as you can see, here is our opening Photoshop window. If you don't remember how to open up Photoshop, you'll go to the launch pad and find PS Photoshop and open it up. And we're going to start with a photograph that you think might look good in black and white. You can choose any photograph that you'd like, but one thing to keep in mind is that if you have a photograph that doesn't have any strong colors, in this photograph here, there's a little bit of warm and blue, but if you have a photograph that just isn't that interesting in terms of color, but is interesting in terms of maybe composition, this one has a lot of lines and geometry in it, and I think that turning it black and white might emphasize that. So first thing, I want to check to see if I want to do any cropping. And this little area over here does look a little distracting to me, so I'm going to make sure I'm on the crop tool. I'm going to make sure that it's free a crop, so I'm going to click on the little clear button, and then I'm just going to move this handle over a little bit, and then in terms of rule of thirds, maybe I'll pull up this bar a little bit here so that we're getting this intersection here at the rule of thirds. It's sort of a dominant part of the composition. All right, and I'll click on the check mark to say select to that. Now to turn it black and white, we're going to go down to the layers palette, and we're going to click on this little half black and white circle. It's called the adjustment layer icon. And once you click on that, all these options will pop up. And one of the options is black and white, as simple as that. And it'll instantly turn your photograph black and white in terms of what Photoshop thinks is good. I just want to show you over here, it's a default, this is the default, but you have all these different options. And for this tutorial, I want you to try them and see how dramatically different they can be depending on the colors and the composition of your photograph. Some of these are going to look more high contrast, low contrast, weird. There's definitely going to be better than others. So move through them and find the one that you think looks good. I actually think the default, Photoshop does a pretty darn good job of doing that. Once you get it to where you like it, you can stop there, but also know that you can also manually adjust these. I actually kind of like it higher contrast. I'm going to move this red farther up towards the higher numbers there. But so just sort of move it around, explore. I just want you to get a feel for what you can do in black and white. The other thing you can do is you can go to the adjustment layer icon again and go to brightness contrast and do a little bit of adjusting there if you want. One thing to keep in mind when you're doing black and white is to look for blown out areas. And what that means is areas that don't have any detail. Like back here, that white has absolutely no detail. So I don't know if I can fix that. It's partly just in the original photograph, but it's just something to be aware. You don't want to make your photograph so dark in the dark areas that you don't get any detail, and you don't want, you want to try to avoid as much as possible these areas of white that are no detail to your to the ability that you can for the photograph that you chose. So I just want you to start thinking about that. We want to have as much details in the dark areas and as much detail in the light areas as possible. All right, I think that looks pretty good. So go ahead and save it and turn it in. File, save as. Save on your computer. And by the way, you can click on this little don't show again so that it doesn't keep coming up. You might want to save it to your Google Drive if that is an option here, or save it to your downloads or your documents, photography documents folder, whichever works best. Now notice Photoshop document, because we have layers. So if you think that you might want to come back to this photograph later and adjust it, you want to make sure that you save a Photoshop version. Or if you think you're just going to turn it in, then just go ahead and save it as click on save as a copy, and that will allow you to then click on JPEG, and you could even title it black and white, and then you can turn that into Google Classroom. Click on the save button. Now the JPEG options box will always pop up. I think that you want to have it at least 10 somewhere, in the high to maximum range. Maybe 10 is a nice compromise. The higher that number, the larger the file size. If you think this is going to be printed out at any point though, you'll want to have it at the maximum size, and click OK. And there you go.